Alright, and welcome back. Continuing to work on the fairings for the rudder. This is the bottom rudder fairing. This is the piece that you saw me trimming in the last video. As I talked about, it has you trim along the scored line to match the profile of the bottom side of the rudder, and it fits unlike the other fairings that have a little bit of a lip to where it slides inside of the skins. This one doesn't have that. It just sits flush, and it sits over those two metal brackets that stick out from the bottom of the rudder itself. And there's no holes either in the fairing or in the metal brackets that they attach to, so you match drill everything according to dimensions on the plans. It tells you where to drill the holes. And then once you get those drilled and match drilled, then you'll size it up to a number 30, and ultimately you're going to install nut plates, and you're going to have to dimple and countersink the rudder pieces to accept the fairing. And also, like you had to do with some of the other fairings, you'll take the countersink bit and you'll countersink the fairing itself to allow the flush mounted rivets to be installed. There's a lot of preparatory work for this bottom fairing. Like I said, you start out by trimming the fairing, and you obviously want to be very careful on how you do that. As you see in the forward end of that fairing, it's where the rudder horns stick out from. And mine actually, as I think I described in a previous video, I've got about a 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch gap on the bottom of those rudder fairings. You can probably barely see it right there underneath the fairing there, or the rudder horn there. But as I've discussed with all the other fairings, the elevator and the top rudder, I'm going to end up putting glass over all of these seams to make it so you can't see the seam, and I will fill the gaps in right there as well. And then what you see me doing just now is the instructions actually have you bend the forward spar flanges in a little bit on either side to allow for the front end of the fairing to fit over. One of the things I'm not quite sure of how to fix is the forward end of the fairing doesn't have anything attached. It doesn't have you drill a hole there to perhaps rivet into the flange of the forward spar. It sits there, and I think I'll probably reinforce it with some more fiberglass as well, just because it seems like it might be a little bit flimsy, and allow for the air as the airplane's going through through the airstream. It seems like that would catch and might cause issues. It like I said, it just sits there, and it's a tab of plastic or a tab of fiberglass that sticks up. So I might reinforce that area as well. And that's just where it forms the gap at the rudder hinge, like you see, and just kind of form fits the rest of it there. Now, at the end of all of this prep work, you actually don't put the bottom fairing on for quite a few steps into this chapter, and this is chapter 12. So right now you see is just doing more of the prep work, getting the nut plates installed. And what it has, you basically take a screw, the number 6 screw, and you have that hold the nut plate in place. You match drill the one side of the nut plate, and then cleco that in place, and then with the screw and the one cleco holding it in place, you match drill the other side of the nut plate. And so that's what you see me doing here. And then all of the holes for the nut plate attachment points, those will all get dimpled, and then obviously the center hole for each nut plate, it's left alone. But just deburring everything, getting it ready for putting on the nut plates themselves. And so you just, like I said, you're going to countersink the two in the rudder horn, the one on either side, and then all of the other ones will be dimpled. Now, the dimpling creates a problem, obviously, because the tail end of the rudder gets narrow. And so you can use the pneumatic squeezer for a good portion of them, but as you get towards the trail end of the rudder, it's just too narrow that you can't get the pneumatic squeezer in there any further. And so what I ended up using was the dimpler that I have that's on the set of vice grips, like that's what you see here. And they're not quite the right size, but it worked well enough, and I was able to rivet and get everything seated flush with a rivet gun. And so here, just going through and attaching the nut plates, riveting them in place. And again, this provides for some problem areas, as like I said, same as with dimpling the holes with the pneumatic squeezer. You can only go so far with the with the pneumatic squeezer to try to drive rivets. And so I end up going to bucking bar and a rivet gun. And even those were difficult as you get to the very tail end. I had to essentially wedge the pieces apart with a piece of wood, which you'll see here in a minute, to get enough gap to put a rivet or a bucking bar in behind the rivets to drive them. So it gets to be a little troublesome, but you just figure a way to work it out, and there are ways. So at the moment, I'm waiting for a reinforcement plate, a doubler for where the tail light goes. I had started to get that all prepared, and the instructions have you basically place it over the tail end of the bottom rudder fairing, and then tape it in place, and then it has you match drill the holes. There's 4 of them, one on the top and bottom, and then 2 on either side. And what I didn't notice is that the holes are actually 2 different sizes. There are 2 size 30s, the ones on either side, and then the one on the top and the bottom are actually match drilled to a number 43, and then you tap the metal to a number 40 tap set, and that's how you screw in the aft lights. So I'm waiting on that to come in, and then once that does, I'll be able to continue on the fairings and get it all done. But this is pretty much where I'm at with the build at the moment. So as soon as I get those parts in, I'll start working on the rest of this and get some more videos put out. Again, I appreciate those that continue to follow, and if you have any comments or questions, leave them below. If you get a chance, hit that like button for me. We'll see you next time around.